I spent 10 years building a life calm enough to earn my parents' approval, only to watch my father stand up at my 30th birthday party and calmly announce into a microphone that I was being disowned. He called me unstable and dangerous, expecting me to shatter in front of his wealthy friends. He did not expect me to walk to the sound booth, grab my own microphone, and ask him about the locked cedar box in my grandmother's attic. The salt air off Larkspur Bay usually calmed me, but tonight it felt heavy, clinging to the windows of the Juniper and Company event loft like a damp second skin. I adjusted the silk runner on the high-top table for the third time, smoothing a non-existent crease. It was my 30th birthday. By all conventional metrics, I had made it. I was the marketing director for a mid-sized analytics firm. I paid my own rent in a city where the cost of living devoured paychecks whole, and I had finally, after a decade of walking on eggshells, brokered a fragile peace with my parents. This party was the treaty signing. I had curated the guest list with the precision of a bomb disposal technician. 20 people, half were my safe people, co-workers like Sarah, who knew which wine I liked, and my best friend Tessa, who knew where the bodies were buried. The other half were the peacekeepers, my parents' social circle, the people Douglas and Marianne Reed needed to impress, the people whose presence turned a birthday celebration into a networking event. Tessa walked up behind me and handed me a glass of sparkling water with a lime twist. "You are vibrating," she said. Her voice was low, designed not to carry over the ambient jazz playing from the speakers. "Stop fixing the table. It looks like a magazine spread." I took the glass, my fingers cold against the condensation. "I just want tonight to be perfect," I said. They promised they would behave. Mom even sent me a text this morning with a heart emoji. Do you know how rare that is? It is like spotting a snow leopard. Tessa raised an eyebrow, her expression skeptical. A heart emoji from Marianne Reed is not affection. Gabriella, it is a warning shot. But the room looks great. You look great. Just breathe. I tried to follow her advice. I was wearing a navy sheath dress that was conservative enough for my mother but fitted enough to remind me I was a woman and not a child. I had paid the deposit for the loft 3 months ago, specifically choosing a venue that was elegant but neutral. No loud colors, no open bar that could lead to sloppy toasts. Controlled. Everything in my life was controlled now. The elevator doors at the far end of the loft chimed, the heavy industrial metal slid open, and the air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Douglas and Marianne Reed had arrived. They moved into the room with the practiced ease of sharks entering a feeding ground. My father, Douglas, wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. His silver hair swept back in that ageless politician style. My mother, Marianne, was in cream cashmere, a color that dared the world to stain it. She looked beautiful and brittle, like spun sugar. I watched them from across the room. This was the performance. I knew it well. They greeted the Hendersons, a couple they knew from the club, with effusive warmth. Douglas clapped Mr. Henderson on the shoulder. Marianne leaned in for a double-cheek kiss, her laugh tinkling like broken glass, bright and sharp. I took a deep breath, pasted on my own smile, and walked over to greet them. "Happy birthday, darling," Marianne said. She leaned in, and I smelled her perfume, gardenias, and something metallic, like old pennies. She kissed the air beside my ear, careful not to smudge her lipstick or touch my skin. "Thank you for coming," I said. "I am glad you made it." Douglas looked over my head, scanning the room. He did not look at me. He was assessing the crowd, counting the net worth in the room, deciding if this event was worth his time. "Small turnout," he noted. His voice was a deep baritone, the kind of voice that made waiters nervous. I kept it intimate. I said, "Just close friends." He finally looked down at me. His eyes were a pale, watery blue, devoid of anything resembling paternal pride. "Intimate," he repeated, the word sounding like an accusation. "Well, let us get a drink." They moved past me, drifting toward the bar. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. The old panic that I had done something wrong just by existing. I shook it off. This was fine. They were here. They were drinking the expensive wine I had bought. We were going to get through this night without a scene. For the next hour, I played the role of the gracious hostess. I circulated. I laughed at jokes I did not hear. I made sure everyone had hors d'oeuvres. But my eyes kept darting back to my parents. There were subtle tells that only a child raised in a minefield would notice. Marianne's smile was too tight. It did not reach her eyes. It was a rictus of muscle tension. She kept checking her watch, a delicate platinum piece, as if she were timing a launch sequence. And Douglas was avoiding my friends. Usually, he would charm anyone within a 5-foot radius, engaging in surface-level banter to assert his dominance. Tonight, he turned his back whenever Tessa or Sarah approached, boxing them out with his shoulders. It was rude. But more than that, it was defensive. He was creating a perimeter. Tessa found me near the dessert table. "Your dad is acting weird," she whispered. "He just asked the bartender to cut the music in 10 minutes. Did you plan a speech?" I frowned. "No. I hate speeches. Why would he cut the music?" "Maybe a surprise gift?" Tessa suggested, though she did not look convinced. A car? A pony? An apology for 30 years of emotional neglect? I laughed, but the sound was hollow. "I should go check on them," I said. I started toward the bar, but before I could get there, the jazz music cut out abruptly. The silence that fell over the room was jarring. The hum of conversation faltered and died as people looked around, confused. My father was standing by the DJ booth, holding a wireless microphone. He tapped it twice. Thump, thump. The sound echoed through the loft, harsh and loud. "Good evening, everyone," Douglas said. He stood tall, commanding the room. He looked every inch the benevolent patriarch. The guests turned toward him, expecting a toast. I saw Sarah smiling, her glass raised. I saw the Hendersons looking expectant. I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. I stopped moving. I was 10 feet away from him. Douglas smiled, but it was not a smile. It was a baring of teeth. "I know it is customary to give a toast on a milestone birthday," Douglas began, his voice steady and rich, "to celebrate the passage of time, to look forward to the future." He paused. He looked directly at me. For the first time all night, he held my gaze. There was no warmth in his eyes. There was only a flat, terrifying finality. "But tonight, Marianne and I are here to do something different," he said. "We are here to set the record straight." Marianne stepped up beside him. She was holding a manila folder. She clutched it against her chest like a shield. Douglas continued, his voice never wavering in volume or pitch. "We have tried, for 30 years, to help Gabriella find her footing. We have covered her mistakes. We have paid for her errors. We have apologized for her behavior. But a family can only endure so much instability before it begins to rot from the inside." The room went absolutely still. The silence was absolute. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator behind the bar. I stood frozen. My brain could not process the words. Instability, rot. Douglas took a breath, savoring the moment. "We are here to disown you, Gabriella." He said it clearly. He enunciated every syllable. "We are severing all ties." He went on, "Effective immediately. We can no longer support someone who is so fundamentally ungrateful, and frankly, a risk to the family's reputation. We have spoken with our legal team. We are done." I felt the blood drain from my face. It felt like the floor had opened up and swallowed me whole. I looked around the room. My friends were staring at me with mouths open, horror written on their faces. The Hendersons looked down at their shoes. This was not a tantrum. This was an execution. Tessa started to move. I saw her from the corner of my eye. She was surging forward, her face twisted in rage, ready to tackle my father or scream him down. "Stop," I whispered. I did not know if she heard me, but I raised a hand, palm out, a small, sharp gesture. "Stop." Tessa froze. She looked at me, pleading, but I could not let her intervene. This was not a fight she could win. This was between me and the monsters who had raised me. My shock was beginning to curdle. The initial blow had landed. leaving me breathless. But now the adrenaline was clearing the fog. I looked at my father. He looked satisfied. He looked like he had just closed a difficult merger. And then I looked at my mother. Marianne stepped forward. She opened the folder. "We have a statement of separation here," she said. Her voice was thinner than Douglas's, shaky but determined. It details the financial boundaries. It references the agreements Gabriella signed years ago, acknowledging her own behavioral issues after the incident. The incident, I blinked. I had a vague memory of a summer when I was 22. A summer where I had been depressed, sleeping too much, crying over a breakup. They had brought me papers then, telling me they were for a trust, for my protection. I had signed them because I trusted them, because I wanted them to leave me alone so I could sleep. They were weaponizing my depression. They were framing my sadness as insanity. "Gabriella," Douglas said, his voice dropping to a tone of mock pity, "we hope you get the help you need, but you will not get it from our bank accounts anymore." He started to lower the microphone. He was done. He had dropped the bomb, and now he was going to walk away, leaving me in the wreckage. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was not tears. I had cried 1,000 times over these people. I had cried until I was dehydrated, begging for their approval. But tonight, staring at my father's smug face, the tears did not come. Instead, a cold, crystalline focus snapped into place. It was like a lens sharpening. I walked toward the DJ booth. Douglas saw me coming. He sneered. "Do not make a scene, Gabriella," he warned. "You are embarrassing yourself." I did not look at him. I looked at the DJ, a young guy named Leo who looked like he wanted to dissolve into the drywall. "Give me the other mic," I said. Leo hesitated. He looked at Douglas, then back at me. Douglas was a terrifying man. But I was the one who had signed the contract. I paid for this room. I said, my voice was low, level, and devoid of tremor, "I am speaking." Leo handed me the spare microphone. I switched it on. The feedback squealed for a second, a sharp piercing sound that made everyone wince. I adjusted my grip. I turned to face my parents. They were standing 5 feet away, confident, untouchable. They thought they had won. They thought they had humiliated me into silence. Douglas crossed his arms. "Go ahead," he said. "Prove us right. Scream. Cry. Show everyone how unstable you are." I brought the microphone to my lips. I am not going to scream. I said, the sound of my own voice surprised me. It was steady. It sounded like a stranger's voice. I looked at the crowd. I saw the pity in their eyes. I hated it. I did not want their pity. I wanted the truth. I turned back to Douglas and Marianne. "You mentioned an incident," I said. "You mentioned agreements. You want to talk about secrets tonight?" Marianne's eyes narrowed. "Be quiet." "Gabriella." "No," I said. "You brought this to a public forum. You invited an audience. So let us give them a show." I took a step closer to them. "Let us talk about the attic," I said. Douglas's face did not move, but his eyes flickered. A tiny, involuntary twitch. I continued. "Let us talk about grandmother's house in Briar Ridge," I said. "Let us talk about the cedar box in the attic, the one tucked behind the insulation in the eaves, the one labeled Holiday Ornaments 1998 in Mom's handwriting." Marianne's hand went to her throat. The color drained from her face so fast, it looked like the blood had simply evaporated. I saw it. I said, I did not say when. I did not say how. I just said the words. I saw it. I saw the lock. I said, "And I saw what you put inside it." Douglas took a step toward me. "That is enough." I did not flinch. "Why did you force me to switch banks when I turned 22, I asked. I pivoted to the crowd, addressing the room now. "They told me it was for better interest rates," I said. "But why did my statements always come to their house, even after I moved out? Why did my mail keep getting lost every time I tried to change the address?" I turned back to my parents. "Why did grandmother's nurse stop returning my calls?" I asked. Her name was Mara. She called me every Sunday for 3 years, and then, the week before grandmother died, She vanished. You told me she was fired for theft. Was she? Or did she see the box too? Douglas was no longer smiling. The confident patriarch was gone. In his place was a man who looked like he was watching a live grenade roll across the floor. You are lying, he hissed. You are delusional. This is exactly what we mean. But he was not looking at the crowd anymore. He was looking at me with pure, unadulterated fear. The room was silent, but the texture of the silence had changed. It was no longer the silence of pity. It was the silence of people watching a car crash in slow motion. The guests were looking at Douglas and Marianne now. They were noticing the sweat on Douglas's upper lip. They were noticing Marianne's trembling hands. I did not know the whole picture. I only had fragments. But I knew enough to know that the cedar box was the key. I had seen it 3 years ago. When I was helping clear out the attic, I had not been able to open it. But I had seen the way my mother panicked when I touched it. I had seen the way my father had snatched it away and hidden it. I had assumed it was old love letters. Or maybe evidence of an affair. But looking at their faces now, I knew it was money. It was always money with them. I lowered the microphone slightly, but I kept my voice projected. You can disown me, I said. You can take my name off the Christmas card list. You can tell everyone I'm crazy. I paused. I looked Douglas dead in the eye. But if you are disowning me tonight, you better tell them what you are really protecting. Because I know it is not the family reputation. It is whatever is in that box. Douglas lunged for me. It was a small movement. Quickly checked. But everyone saw it. He looked like he wanted to strike me. Get out, he snarled. I smiled. It was a cold, humorless smile. It is my party. Dad, I said. But do not worry. I am leaving. I placed the microphone gently on the DJ table. The click echoed in the silence. I walked past them. I did not look back. I signaled to Tessa. She was staring at me with wide eyes, a mixture of awe and terror. She grabbed her purse and followed me. We walked out of the loft, past the frozen waiters, past the stunned guests. I held my head high. I felt like I was made of glass. One wrong move and I would shatter into a million pieces. But I held it together until the elevator doors closed. As soon as we were in the metal box, the adrenaline crashed. My knees buckled. Tessa caught me. Oh my God. Gabby, she breathed. Oh my God. What was that? What is in the box? I do not know, I whispered. I leaned against the wall, trying to get air into my lungs. I really do not know, but I know it scares them. We reached the ground floor. The lobby was empty. I needed to get out of there. I needed to go home and lock my door. I reached for my purse to get my keys. I stopped. The clasp of my leather tote was open. I always kept it closed. Always. It was a habit from living in the city. I pulled the bag open wide. My wallet was there. My phone was there. My lipstick. But the inner zipper pocket was unzipped. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached inside. I kept a small envelope in there. It contained a certified copy of my birth certificate and my social security card. I had needed them for a background check at work 2 days ago and had not taken them out yet. The pocket was empty. I felt around, my fingers scraping the lining. Nothing. They were gone. I looked up at Tessa. My birth certificate. I said, my social security card. They are gone. Tessa frowned. Did you drop them? No. I said, I checked before I came in. A chill went through me that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. They did not just come here to humiliate me. I said, they came here to erase me. I looked back at the elevator doors. Somewhere up there. My parents were spinning a story, telling everyone I was sick, unstable, a liar. But down here, in the quiet of the lobby, the truth was far more sinister. They had rifled through my purse while I was greeting guests. They had stolen my identity documents. It was surgical. It was precise. And it meant that whatever was happening, whatever was in that cedar box, was not just about the past. It was about the future. And they had just fired the first shot in a war I did not even know I was fighting. Let us go, I said to Tessa. My voice was trembling now. "We need to go. Now." We pushed through the double doors into the cool night air of Larkspur Bay. I looked over my shoulder, half expecting to see my father standing in the window, watching me. The statement of separation was a lie. They were not letting me go. They were trapping me. And I had just told them I knew where the bodies were buried. I got into Tessa's car, and as we pulled away, I realized that my 30th birthday was not the end of my life with the Reeds. It was the beginning of the end of theirs. The silence in my apartment the next morning was not peaceful. It was heavy, a physical weight pressing against my eardrums. I woke up on my couch, still in the dress from the night before, my neck stiff and my mouth tasting like stale wine and dread. I reached for my phone on the coffee table. Instinct. I wanted to call Tessa. I wanted to check my messages. I wanted to see if my parents had sent a follow-up text. Maybe an apology. Maybe a demand. The screen lit up, but the signal bars were empty. No service. I frowned and tapped the screen. I toggled airplane mode on and off. Nothing. I restarted the phone. When it booted back up, a notification popped up in the center of the screen. SIM not provisioned. My stomach dropped. I paid my own rent, my own car insurance, my own utilities. But the phone plan was the one straggler. It was a family plan, a relic from college that we had never bothered to dismantle because it was cheaper to keep 4 lines than 3. It was a convenience, or so I had thought. They had cut it. Not at the end of the billing cycle, not with a warning, overnight. I sat up, the room spinning slightly. I went to my laptop and opened it. The Wi-Fi was mine. Thankfully, I logged into my provider's website, but my credentials were invalid. Access denied. They were scrubbing me. I went to the kitchen to make coffee, my hands shaking so badly I spilled grounds on the counter. There was a stack of mail on the island that I had brought in yesterday and ignored in the frenzy of birthday prep. I sifted through it, a bill, a flyer, and a certified letter from Crestwell Medical Group. I ripped it open. Dear Ms. Reed, this letter is to confirm the removal of your authorization as a designated emergency contact and healthcare proxy for Douglas Reed and Marianne Reed. Effective immediately per their written request dated January 27th, dated yesterday. They had filed the paperwork before they even came to the party. I stared at the paper. This was not just about cutting financial ties. This was about erasing my existence as their daughter. If my father had a heart attack today, the hospital would not call me. I would find out from the obituary. I needed to get out of the apartment. The walls felt like they were closing in. I drove to Hollow Pine Cafe to meet Tessa. I had to use the cafe's Wi-Fi to message her since my phone was a brick. When she walked in, she looked as tired as I felt. She slid into the booth opposite me and pushed a large coffee toward my hands. You look like you fought a bear. She said, I feel like the bear won. I said, they cut my phone. Tessa, they removed me from their medical files. They stole my birth certificate. Tessa's eyes widened. That is fast. That is organized. It is a blitzkrieg. I said, I took a sip of the coffee, letting the heat burn my throat. I always knew it was conditional. My whole life. I felt it. If I got a B in math, the house got quiet for 3 days. If I wore the wrong dress to a dinner, Mom would look at me like I was a stain on the carpet. I spent 30 years thinking I was one wrong move away from being discarded. I looked out the window at the gray morning. Last night just confirmed it. I finally made the wrong move. What was the move? Tessa asked. Existing? Seeing the box. I said, it always comes back to the box. I told her about the attic in Briar Ridge, about the cedar box I had found 3 years ago when I was helping them clean out grandmother's house after she passed. It was heavy, locked, and hidden behind a loose panel of drywall. When I asked about it, my mother had nearly dropped a vase. My father had snatched it from me and told me to stop snooping. I need to see what is in it. I said, or at least prove it exists. You are going to Briar Ridge? Tessa asked. I have to. My passport is in my old bedroom. If they took my birth certificate, they might come for that next. I need my documents. I need to know who I am on paper before they shred it all. The drive to Briar Ridge took 40 minutes. It was an affluent suburb, the kind of place where the lawns were manicured with nail scissors and the fences were high enough to hide secrets. I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. It was a sprawling colonial with white pillars and black shutters. It looked perfect. It looked like the American dream. I walked up the front steps, my keys in my hand. I slid my key into the lock. It did not turn. I jiggled it. I pulled it out and tried again. Nothing. I stepped back and looked at the door. The hardware was new. Shiny brass. No scratches. They changed the locks. I stood there on the porch, feeling a wave of nausea. This was the house where I learned to walk. This was the house where I had my prom photos taken. And now I was locked out like a burglar. I heard a soft whirring sound. I looked up. In the corner of the porch ceiling, a small black dome camera pivoted. The lens focused directly on me. A red light blinked, recording. I backed away. I felt exposed. I felt threatened. I got back in my car and locked the doors. My heart hammering. They were watching. They knew I would come. I needed a lawyer. A real one. Not the family attorney my father played golf with. I drove to a parking lot down the street and used the Wi-Fi from a nearby library to search for firms. I found one called Marrow and Slate Legal. They had good reviews. Focused on family law and estate disputes. Mid-sized, respectable, but not flashy. I called them from a payphone outside the library. A relic I was surprised still worked. The receptionist was polite. I gave her my name. Gabriella Reed. She repeated, "Oh, are you related to Douglas Reed?" I hesitated. "Why?" She laughed. A light, professional sound. "Mr. Reed is a longtime donor to the Civic Arts Board. Our senior partner, Mr. Slate, sits on that board with him. They just had a gala last month. Small world." I felt the cold seep into my bones again. "Yes," I said. "Small world. Actually, I have realized I have a conflict of schedule. I will call back." I hung up. I could not use them. I could not use anyone in Larkspur Bay or Briar Ridge. Douglas Reed's money was woven into the foundation of this town like rebar. He sat on boards. He donated to hospitals. He sponsored the Little League teams. Every door I knocked on would have his fingerprints on the handle. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel. I was checkmated. I was isolated. Then I remembered the other house, grandmother's house. It was on the other side of town, in an older, quieter neighborhood. It had been vacant since she died 3 years ago. My father was the executor, and he had been preparing it for sale for 36 months. It was just sitting there. If the cedar box was important, maybe there was a trace of it there. I drove to the old Victorian house on Elm Street. The for sale sign that had been in the yard last year was gone. The grass was overgrown. The windows were dark. I parked down the street and walked up. I still had my key to this house. Grandmother had given it to me when I was 16, and I kept it on a separate ring. I tried the front door. Locked. But this key turned. The door creaked open. The air inside was stale, smelling of dust and old lavender. Sheets covered the furniture like ghosts. I went straight upstairs to the attic. The pull-down cord was hanging in the hallway. I yanked it, and the ladder slid down. I climbed up into the gloom. The attic was mostly empty now. The stacks of old magazines and holiday decorations were gone, but I went to the spot under the eaves where I had found the box. The loose panel of drywall was gone. It had been replaced with a fresh piece of plywood. I touched it. It was secured with new shiny screws. Phillips head. I tried to pry it with my fingernails, but it was tight. I looked around for a tool, but the attic was swept clean. Someone had been here. Recently, they had sealed the hiding place. I climbed back down, defeated. As I walked out the front door, a voice called out from the yard next door. "Gabriella?" I turned. It was Eleanor Hart, grandmother's neighbor. She was an elderly woman with sharp eyes and a cane, wearing a gardening hat. "Mrs. Hart." I said, "Hi." She shuffled over to the property line, looking around nervously. "I have not seen you in ages," she said. "I thought they sold the place." "Not yet," I said. "Just checking on things." She lowered her voice. leaning over the fence. "I saw lights up there last week," she whispered. "Late, midnight or so." My pulse quickened. "Who was it?" "A van," she said. "No markings. 2 men. They were carrying boxes out. Paper boxes, like the kind you use for files. They were in a hurry. They dropped one in the driveway and cursed up a storm before they shoved everything back in. Last week. Just days before my birthday. Did you see who they were?" I asked. "No," she said. "But they left the gate to the back shed open. I went to close it the next morning, and I found this on the ground." She dug into the pocket of her gardening apron and pulled out a small silver key. "I think it goes to the shed padlock." She said, "They must have cut the old one and put a new one on. But they dropped the spare. I was going to call your father, but, well, I never liked him much." She handed me the key. Her eyes were kind, conspiratorial. "Thank you." "Mrs. Hart," I said, "thank you so much." I walked to the backyard. The old wooden shed was overgrown with ivy. There was a new padlock on the latch, shining against the weathered wood. I inserted the silver key. It turned. The shed smelled of gasoline and damp earth. It was full of old garden tools, a rusted lawnmower, stacks of clay pots. I used the flashlight on my phone, which still worked for basic functions, and scanned the shelves. In the corner, under a pile of burlap sacks, I saw a piece of paper. It looked like it had been torn from a clipboard. I picked it up. It was an inventory sheet. Date: January 20th, 2026. Location: Site B, attic. Item: cedar box contents. Do not disclose. My breath caught. Below that, there was a list. Most of it was technical jargon about ledgers and correspondence. But one line stood out. Reference: Trust ID 8842-A. Beneficiary conflict. Check. Negative. Transfer to the Renfield Cultural Trust. Renfield Cultural Trust. I had never heard of it. I folded the paper and put it in my bra. It was the only safe place I had left. I locked the shed and waved goodbye to Mrs. Hart, back in my car. I drove to a coffee shop 3 towns over. Paranoid now about being tracked, I used their computer. I typed in Renfield Cultural Trust. The website was sleek, expensive, glossy photos of art galleries, smiling scholarship recipients, black tie galas. It looked like every other high-end charity foundation. Mission: preserving the artistic heritage of the coast. I clicked on the board and donors page. There were lists of names, prominent families, corporations, and then I saw it. It was a photo from a fundraiser last year, a wide shot of a ballroom. In the background, near a pillar, was a man in a tuxedo. He was partially obscured by a potted palm, cropped in a way that suggested he was not the subject of the photo. But I knew the posture, I knew the set of the shoulders. It was my father, Douglas Reed. He was not listed on the board. He was not listed as a donor, but he was there. I looked at the contact page. There was a phone number for the main office in Carmel Heights. I used the payphone again. Renfield Trust. A woman answered. Her voice was smooth, professional. "Hi," I said. "I am calling regarding a file. I have a reference number." "Go ahead," she said. "Trust ID 8842-A. I said. There was a pause, a long pause. I heard the clicking of a keyboard, then it stopped abruptly. "Who is calling? Please?" Her voice had changed. The smoothness was gone. It was tight, wary. "Gabriella Reed." I said. Another silence. "I am sorry." "Ms. Reed," she said, "that file is restricted. I cannot access it." "Restricted by whom?" I asked. I do not know," she stammered. "The system just says, executive access only. I have to go." She hung up. She sounded terrified. I sat in the booth, staring at the phone. They knew my name. The moment I said it, the wall came down. I went back to the website. I scoured it for anything else. I found a list of past grants. Most were for vague things like community sculpture or historical renovation, but the dates lined up. The trust was established 30 years ago. the same year I was born. I drove home as the sun was setting. The city lights were coming on, blurring in my tired eyes. I felt small. I was one woman against a machine that had money, influence, and now, my identity. I got back to my apartment and double-locked the door. I pushed a chair under the handle. It felt melodramatic, but after the camera at my parents' house, I was not taking chances. I opened my laptop. I had a new email. It was in my spam folder. The sender was watcher_01 with a domain I did not recognize. The subject line was blank. I hesitated. Viruses, malware. My father could hire people to destroy my computer remotely. But curiosity won. I opened it. The text was short. They disowned you to keep you quiet. Do not go to the trust alone. There was no signature, just an attachment. I clicked it. It was a photo. It was a picture of a table. On the table was the cedar box. It was open. The contents were blurry, hard to make out, but I could see stacks of yellowed paper, a leather-bound notebook, and something that looked like a deed. I stared at the screen. Someone else knew. Someone else had been in the room when that box was opened, and they were warning me. Do not go to the trust alone. I looked at the time. It was 9 in the evening. I was not alone. I had Tessa. And I had the truth, or at least the edge of it. My parents had tried to sever me from the family to protect this. Whatever was in that box, whatever the Renfield Cultural Trust was hiding, it was worth destroying their own daughter for. I printed the photo. I printed the email. I was done crying. I was done feeling like a victim. If they wanted a war, they had one. I was going to Carmel Heights tomorrow, and I was going to tear that trust apart, brick by glossy brick. The anonymous email was still burning a hole in my mind the next morning. Do not go to the trust alone. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a directive. I called Tessa from my laptop using a voice-over IP app. She picked up on the first ring, her voice tight with worry. I am coming, she said before I even finished the sentence. I have a sick day. Let us go burn something down. Figuratively, I said. We are going on a fact-finding mission. Carmel Heights was an hour south, a wealthy enclave of glass office buildings and ocean views that smelled of eucalyptus and money. The Renfield Cultural Trust was housed in the topmost floors of the Sentinel Tower, a building so sleek it looked like it had been carved from a single block of obsidian. I met Tessa in the parking garage. She looked fierce in a blazer and combat boots, ready for battle. Okay, she said. What is the plan? We storm the castle? We walk in like we own the place. I said. We ask questions. We see who flinches. We took the elevator to the 30th floor. The doors slid open onto a lobby that was quieter than a library and twice as intimidating. The floors were white marble. The walls were hung with abstract art that probably cost more than my entire education, and the reception desk was a fortress of frosted glass. A security guard in a dark suit stood by the wall. He did not look like a rent-a-cop. He looked like ex-military. His eyes locked onto us the moment we stepped off the elevator. He tapped an earpiece. They are here, he murmured. They were expecting us. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face neutral. I walked up to the reception desk. The woman behind it was young, polished, and terrified. She did not even ask for my name. Ms. Reed, she said. Ms. Perrin is expecting you. Please, have a seat. She gestured to a low leather sofa. We sat. The silence was oppressive. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning and the thud of my own heart. 5 minutes later, a woman emerged from a set of double doors. She was in her late 40s, wearing a suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life. Her hair was a severe bob, and her glasses were thick-rimmed and expensive. Ms. Reed, she said. I am Lydia Perrin, Compliance Director. She did not offer her hand. She stood at a distance, as if I were contagious. Thank you for seeing us, I said. Standing up, she gave a tight, practiced smile. It was the kind of smile you give to a customer who is complaining about a meal you know is perfectly fine. I understand you have inquiries regarding the trust, she said. Her voice was smooth. rehearsed. Unfortunately, as you know, trust matters are strictly confidential. We cannot discuss donor details or beneficiary information with unauthorized parties. I am not an unauthorized party. I said, I am the granddaughter of the woman whose assets founded a significant portion of this trust. Lydia's expression did not flicker. Family lineage does not automatically grant access. Ms. Reed, the terms of the trust are quite specific. Specific how? I asked. She sighed, a tiny sound of impatience. We have a fiduciary duty to protect the privacy of our donors and the integrity of their intent. We cannot simply open our files because you are curious. I stepped closer. I am not curious. Ms. Perrin, I am being erased. My parents disowned me 2 nights ago. They are scrubbing my name from every document they can find. And I found an inventory list that says a cedar box from my grandmother's attic was brought here. To this trust? Lydia's eyes widened slightly. The mention of the box hit a nerve. I can assure you, she said, her voice a little higher now, that all acquisitions are handled legally. Then tell me if my name is in your system. I said, just a yes or no. Am I listed in any capacity? Lydia looked at the security guard, then back at me. She seemed to be warring with herself. The corporate mask slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing a woman who was tired and perhaps a little guilty. Your grandmother's intent was clear. She said softly. The words hung in the air. Your grandmother's intent was clear. That was not a denial. That was an admission that she knew what my grandmother wanted. She had seen the documents. So you have seen her intent? I pressed. You have read the files? Lydia stiffened. The mask slammed back into place. I cannot discuss this further, she said. Please, leave. She turned to go. Wait, I said. She paused. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a business card. She turned back and slid it across the marble reception desk. If you have legal representation, have them contact our legal department, she said loudly. For the benefit of the guard and the receptionist, that is the only channel. She walked away, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. I picked up the card. It was a standard heavy cardstock. Lydia Perrin, Compliance Director. I flipped it over. On the back, scrawled in blue ink, were 4 words. Ask for File 4C. Archived. I looked at Tessa. She had seen it too. File 4C, she whispered. We walked out of the building without another word. The security guard watched us all the way to the elevator. Once we were in the car, I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for an hour. She wants to help, I said, or she is scared. Both. Tessa said, Did you see her hands? She was shaking. We have a file number now. I said, But we need to know what it connects to. If my grandmother's intent was clear, why am I not in the loop? Why did my parents have to change the locks? Probate. Tessa said, If there is a trust, there is a will, and if there is a will, it is filed with the county. We drove to the county clerk's office. It was a drab government building, a stark contrast to the gleaming tower of the trust. We pulled the file for my grandmother, Elena Reed. I had seen the will before, briefly, after she died. It was standard. Everything to my father, Douglas, with a few bequests to charity. I had received a small sum, enough for a down payment on a condo, and I had been grateful. I thought that was it. I opened the file. The clerk handed me a thick folder. I flipped through the pages. Last will and testament, death certificate, inventory of assets, and then, near the back, I found it, a codicil. It was a single page, adding an amendment to the will. It was dated 3 weeks before she died. I, Elena Reed, being of sound mind, hereby amend my last will and testament to include the creation of a restricted fund. The text was dense legalese, but the gist was that she was moving a significant portion of her liquid assets into a separate entity. The name of the entity was not listed, just a reference to Exhibit A, which was missing from the file. But it was the signatures that caught my eye. The witnesses. Witness 1, Marcus Thorne. Witness 2, Beatrice Hale. I knew those names. Marcus Thorne was on the board of the Civic Arts Council with my father. Beatrice Hale was my mother's tennis partner. They were my parents' friends, not my grandmother's, and the signature at the bottom, Elena Reed, it looked wrong. My grandmother had elegant, looping handwriting. Even when she was sick, she took pride in her penmanship. This signature was shaky. The lines were jagged. The ink pooled in places, as if the pen had been pressed down too hard, or as if someone else had been guiding her hand. I took a picture of the page with my phone. "This looks sketchy," Tessa said, leaning over my shoulder. "Look at the date. She was in the hospital then, wasn't she?" "She was at home," I said, "under hospice care. She was on heavy morphine." I looked at the notary stamp. "Drayton and Muir Notary Services. Let us go," I said. Drayton and Muir was a small storefront in a strip mall near the hospital. The bell chimed as we walked in. The place smelled of toner and stale coffee. A young woman was behind the counter, typing. She looked up. "Can I help you?" I pulled up the photo of the codicil on my phone. "Hi," I said. "I know this is a long shot, but were you working here in January of 2023? She squinted at me. "Yeah, I have been here 5 years. Why?" I showed her the stamp. "This is your notary stamp. Do you remember notarizing this?" It would have been a house call. To the Reed estate in Briar Ridge. Her face changed. Recognition dawned, followed immediately by discomfort. "Oh," she said, "the Reed signing. Yeah, I remember that." "You do?" I asked. "Why?" "Because it was a nightmare," she said. She lowered her voice, leaning over the counter. "Usually, signings are boring, but that one, the vibe was awful." "Tell me." I said, "Please, it is important." She glanced at the door, then back at me. The old lady, Mrs. Reed, she was really out of it. She kept asking where her granddaughter was. She kept saying, "I want to talk to Gabriella." My heart slammed against my ribs. And the man, your dad, I guess. He was getting frustrated. He kept telling her, "Gabriella is busy. Mother, we have to do this now." And then he would whisper to the other woman, "We cannot let her ruin this." "Ruin what?" I asked. "I do not know," the clerk said. But he was aggressive. He put the pen in her hand. He practically held it there. I almost walked out. I told him if she was not lucid, I could not notarize it. But then she seemed to wake up for a second. She looked at him and said, "Fine, but the box stays." And then she signed it. The box stays. I felt a wave of nausea. They had bullied a dying woman into signing something she barely understood, all to keep me away from that box. "Thank you," I whispered. We left the shop. I felt heavy, burdened by the image of my grandmother, weak and confused, being badgered by her own son. "I need a professional." I said, "I need to know if that signature is even valid." I called a friend of a friend, a paralegal who gave me the number of a forensic document examiner named Dr. Aris. I sent him the photo of the signature. He called me back within the hour. "I cannot give you a definitive ruling without the original," he said, his voice gravelly. "But looking at the pressure patterns, the way the ascenders trail off, this was signed by someone under extreme duress or heavy sedation. There are micro-tremors consistent with neurological struggle. It is highly irregular. If you challenge this in court, you would have a strong case for lack of capacity. So it is fraud?" I asked. "It is definitely suspicious," he said. "Enough to raise doubt, enough to open discovery." I hung up. I had a thread. A frayed, ugly thread. But it was something. But while I was hunting for the truth, my parents were hunting me. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from social media. A friend had tagged me in a post. I opened it. It was a post from Beatrice Hale, the witness to the codicil, so heartbroken to see families struggle with mental health issues, sending love to Douglas and Marianne Reed as they navigate this difficult chapter. "It is so hard when a loved one refuses help and spirals into instability. We are here for you." It did not name me. It did not have to. Everyone in their circle knew who the loved one was. It was a masterful piece of vague booking. It planted the seed. Gabriella is unstable. Gabriella is refusing help. So when I inevitably spoke up, when I inevitably accused them of fraud, I would just look like the crazy daughter lashing out. It is a trap. I said to Tessa, showing her the phone, "They are inoculating the public against me." Before Tessa could answer, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Brightwell Metrics, HR. My stomach dropped. "Hello?" I answered. "Gabriella." "It is Karen from HR," the voice said. It was not her usual friendly tone. It was professional, distant. "Hi, Karen," I said. "Is everything okay? We need you to come in," she said. "We have received some concerned inquiries." "Inquiries?" I asked. "From whom?" "I cannot say," she said, "but they are regarding your fitness for duty and some potential reputational risks to the firm. We need to discuss it." I closed my eyes. They were not just cutting me off. They were burning my crops. They were salting the earth. "I will be there in 20 minutes, I said. I hung up. I looked at Tessa. They called my job. I said. Tessa slammed her hand against the steering wheel. "That is low. That is so low." I went into the office. The meeting was brief and humiliating. Karen sat with the VP of Operations. They had received an anonymous email, likely from a throwaway account, claiming that I was undergoing a severe psychiatric episode and that I had been involved in a violent altercation at a private event. "It is a lie," I told them, keeping my voice steady. "I was disowned by my parents 2 nights ago because I asked a question they did not want to answer. This is retaliation. We have to investigate," the VP said, looking uncomfortable. "We deal with sensitive client data. Gabriella, if there is a risk of instability, we have to be careful. I want everything in writing." I said, "Every accusation, every source. If you fire me based on gossip, I will sue you for wrongful termination." They did not fire me. Not yet. But they put a note in my file. Pending review. I walked out of the office feeling like I was covered in slime. The disowning was not just a family matter. It was a contagion. It was bleeding into my livelihood, my career, my future. I got back to my apartment that night. Exhausted. I felt like I was fighting a ghost. Every time I tried to punch back, my hand went through smoke. I sat on my couch in the dark. My laptop chimed. Another email. Watcher_01. I opened it immediately. "Your grandmother tried to leave you control. Not just money." I stared at the words. Control. There was a second attachment. I clicked it. It was a photo of a single page. It looked like it was from a legal pad. Handwritten. The header read, "Letter of Intent. G. Reed." I zoomed in. My grandmother's handwriting, the real handwriting, strong, loopy, distinct. "I am worried about the foundation. Douglas is losing his way. He sees it as a bank, not a trust. I want Gabriella to have the oversight. She has the moral compass he lacks. She must be the check on his power." And at the bottom, underlined twice, "If they force a choice, choose the truth." I sat back. This changed everything. This was not just about inheritance. This was not just about a slice of the pie. This was about power. My grandmother had wanted me to have oversight. She wanted me to be the watchdog. She wanted me to control the money that Douglas was using to buy his influence. That was why they disowned me. It was not punishment. It was preemptive. If I had control, I could audit them. I could see the books. I could stop the flow of money. And by disowning me, by painting me as unstable, they were trying to disqualify me. They were trying to prove that I was unfit to serve as a trustee or an advisor. They were terrified. I looked at the email again. Choose the truth. My grandmother had built a safeguard, a dead man's switch, and by trying to destroy me, my parents might have just tripped the wire. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number I had found earlier, a lawyer who specialized in fiduciary disputes, a man named Nolan Vance. He was known for being a shark, for taking on the impossible cases. He picked up on the third ring. "Vance." He said, "Mr. Vance." I said, My name is Gabriella Reed. My parents just disowned me to cover up a fraudulent codicil and a looted trust. I have a file number, a witness to coercion, and a letter of intent from the deceased. I paused. And I am ready to burn it all down. There was a silence on the other end. Then, I heard the scratch of a pen on paper. Be in my office at 8 a.m., he said. Bring everything. Keystone Harbor Legal Collective was not located in a glass tower. It was tucked into a converted brick warehouse down by the docks, squeezed between a fishmonger and a maritime supply shop. The air smelled of salt and diesel, a stark contrast to the sterile, eucalyptus-scented air of Carmel Heights. Nolan Vance did not look like the lawyers my father employed. He was a man in his 50s with messy gray hair, wearing a corduroy jacket that had seen better decades. His office was a chaotic ecosystem of stacked files, books on maritime law, and half-empty coffee mugs. He read the letter of intent I had printed out. He read the email from the anonymous watcher. He looked at the photo of the codicil. He did not gasp. He did not whistle. He simply adjusted his glasses and looked at me. You are in a significant amount of trouble. Ms. Reed, he said. His voice was gravelly, calm, and utterly devoid of salesmanship. I know, I said. That is why I am here. Nolan leaned back in his creaking chair. Most people think fiduciary disputes are about money. He said, they are not. They are about narrative. Your parents have spent 30 years writing a story where they are the benevolent patrons, and you are the difficult child. Now they are trying to publish the final chapter. Can we stop them? I asked. Nolan picked up a pen and tapped it against the desk. We can interrupt the printing press, he said, but do not expect a miracle. The law is a blunt instrument, and your father has a lot of insulation. We are going to file targeted requests today, probate file copies, trustee disclosures, and a notice to preserve documents sent to the Renfield Trust, your parents, and anyone who might have touched that codicil. He looked me in the eye. They will hit back, he said, hard. And it will not be in court. It will be in your life. Are you ready for that? I thought about the empty zipper pocket in my purse. I thought about the security camera swiveling toward me on my childhood porch. I do not have a choice, I said. Good, Nolan said. Sign here. We filed the paperwork at noon. By 9 the next morning, the retaliation arrived. It came via a courier. A thick envelope delivered to my apartment door. The return address was Bexley and Rowe, a crisis management and public relations firm that handled scandals for senators and tech CEOs. I opened it at my kitchen table. My hands were shaking, but less than before. Anger was replacing fear. Dear Miss Reed, we represent Douglas and Marianne Reed. It has come to our attention that you are circulating baseless and damaging allegations regarding the administration of the estate of Elena Reed. These insinuations constitute defamation by implication. Your current behavioral trajectory suggests a pattern of harassment. Be advised that any further dissemination of false narratives regarding the Renfield Cultural Trust will be met with immediate legal action to protect our clients' reputations. Defamation by implication. I called Nolan. They are accusing me of implying things. I said, pacing my living room. I have not even said anything publicly yet. Nolan chuckled dryly on the other end of the line. That is the point, Gabriella. They are threatening you for thoughts you have not even spoken aloud. It is a suppression tactic. They are terrified. Terrified of what? I asked. Of what you might find if you keep digging, Nolan said. People with clean hands do not hire Bexley and Rowe to threaten their daughters within 24 hours of a document request. They are trying to scare you into a settlement before we even get to discovery. Do not reply. Frame it. It is proof of their anxiety. An hour later, my phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. Mom. The contact photo was a picture of us at a brunch 3 years ago. We looked happy. It felt like looking at a photo of two strangers. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text came through. Gabriella, this has gone too far. Your father and I want to sit down. No lawyers. Just family. We want closure. Meet us at Sable Ridge Country Club at 2 o'clock. Closure. It was a soft word. A therapy word. It was bait. I forwarded the text to Nolan. Tell them you will meet, he replied, but only if I am present. I typed the response. My thumbs hovered over the screen. I was breaking the conditioning of a lifetime, the conditioning that said I had to come when they called, that I had to be polite, that I had to fix the mood. I will meet you, I wrote, but my attorney, Nolan Vance, will be with me. The reply was immediate. Absolutely not. This is a family matter. If you bring a stranger, do not bother coming. I stared at the phone. A family matter. They had disowned me in front of 20 people, cut my phone, stole my identity, and hired a PR firm to threaten me. But now, suddenly, we were a family again because they needed me in a room alone. I typed one word. No, I blocked the number. I sat there, feeling a strange mixture of grief and liberation. I had just declined an audience with the king and queen. I had chosen boundaries over approval. The sky did not fall. The world kept turning. While I was fielding threats, Tessa was following the money. She came over that evening with a stack of printouts and a bottle of cheap wine. She spread the papers over my coffee table like a general laying out a battle map. Okay, she said. I went down the rabbit hole. You know how the Renfield Trust website lists their grants? Yeah. I said, community sculpture, historical renovation. Right, Tessa said. Well, I cross-referenced the recipients. Look at this. She pointed to a highlighted column. Renfield gives a $50,000 grant to the Larkspur Heritage Initiative for archival preservation. Okay, I said. Sounds boring but legal. Keep following the circle, Tessa said. She moved her finger to another sheet. The Larkspur Heritage Initiative hires a consulting firm called Vector Strategies to manage the project. And guess who sits on the advisory board of the Rothwell Civic Arts Council, which shares an office and administrative staff with Vector Strategies? Douglas Reed. I said, exactly. Tessa said, it is a loop. Renfield donates to a nonprofit. The nonprofit hires a consultant. The consultant pays fees to a board where your dad has influence. The money goes out, gets washed through 2 layers of bureaucracy, and comes back as consulting fees or administrative overhead. Is it illegal? I asked. Tessa poured herself a glass of wine. On paper? Probably not. It is what rich people call synergy. But it is suspicious. And here is the kicker. The scholarships? The ones Renfield is so proud of? Yeah. I looked up the recipients for the last 5 years. Tessa said. They are all real kids. But 3 of them? Their parents are on the zoning board for the county. 2 of them are children of the partners at the law firm that handles the trust's taxes. It is not charity, Gabby. It is a patronage system. Your dad is using your grandmother's money to buy favors from everyone in town. I looked at the web of highlighters. My grandmother hated patronage. She hated favors. She was a woman who believed in merit and hard work. She would have burned the money before she let it be used to bribe a zoning board. He corrupted it. I whispered. He turned her legacy into a slush fund for his social climbing. We need more than patterns. I said, we need a witness. I thought about the nurse, Mara, the one who had vanished. I spent the next day tracking her down. It was not easy. She had moved 3 times in 3 years. But I found a forwarding address in a lower-income neighborhood 40 minutes inland, in a town called Oakhaven. I drove out there alone. The complex was run down, with peeling paint and rusted stairwells. I found apartment 2B and knocked. The woman who opened the door looked older than I remembered. Mara Keene had been vibrant, strong. Now she looked tired. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes wary. Gabriella? She asked. She looked like she was seeing a ghost. Hi, Mara, I said. Can I talk to you? She hesitated, looking down the hallway. They told me never to talk to you, she said softly. Who? I asked. Your parents. She said, I am not with them. Mara, I am fighting them. She looked at my face, searching for the lie. She did not find one. She opened the door wider. Her apartment was small but clean. She made me tea. Her hands shook slightly as she poured the water. I tried to call you, she said, sitting across from me at a small formica table, after she died. I tried so many times. I never got the calls. I said, I know. She said, your father. He blocked the number on your phone. He told me if I ever reached out to you, he would make sure I never worked in this state again. He said you were unstable. He said you would blame me for her death. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. They had gaslit everyone. My grandmother. I said, did she ask for me? Mara's eyes filled with tears. Every day. She whispered, every single day. She would say, where is my Gabby? Why does she not come? Your mother told her you were busy. She told her you were traveling. She told her you did not want to see her like that. I gripped the edge of the table. I felt sick. I had thought she was too sick to see me. They had told me she was in a coma for the last week. She was awake? I asked. She was lucid until the end. Mara said, and she was angry. Mara got up and went to a drawer in the kitchen. She pulled out a small, worn spiral notebook. I kept a log, she said, for the medication, but I wrote other things down too, because I knew something was wrong. She opened the notebook and pushed it toward me. January 20th. Douglas and Marianne here. Argument in the bedroom. Elena shouting. January 21st. Douglas back. He has a folder. Label says 4C. He takes it from the bedside table. Elena says, that is not yours. Put it back. He ignores her. I stared at the entry. January 21st. That was the week before the codicil was signed. He took the folder. I said, he took it. Mara confirmed. And your grandmother was frantic. She kept saying, the amendments, the letter. He took the letter. She made me promise to tell you. She said, tell Gabby the box is the key. Tell her I tried to protect it. She tried to protect it. I looked at Mara. Will you testify? I asked. If it comes to that? Mara looked terrified. She looked at her small apartment, her meager life. They are powerful people. Gabriella, I know. I said, but they are liars, and they made my grandmother die thinking I abandoned her. Mara took a deep breath. She closed her eyes. Yes, she said, I will do it. For Elena. I left Oakhaven with the notebook in my purse. I felt armed. I had a witness. I had a timeline. But the war was escalating. That night, a friend sent me a link. Have you seen this? It was a clip on a local gossip site, the kind that covered society scandals and charity galas. The headline read, Heiress Meltdown. Audio surfaces of Reed family birthday blowout. I clicked play. It was audio from the party. The quality was grainy, clearly recorded on a phone in a pocket. I heard my father's voice, calm and reasonable. We just want to help you. Gabriella. Then my voice. But it was wrong. I'm going to destroy you. Pay. Tell everyone. Money. It was my voice. But the cadence was choppy. The intonation jumped around. I will make you pay. I had never said that. I had said, tell them what you are really protecting. They had spliced it. They had taken words from different sentences, maybe even from different conversations over the years, and stitched them together to make me sound like a vengeful, incoherent lunatic threatening her parents for money. I read the comments. Spoiled brat. She sounds unhinged. Rich kids and their drama. Sad. My chest tightened. I could not breathe. It was one thing to know the truth. It was another to have a lie about you broadcast to thousands of people who would believe it because it fit a stereotype. I called Nolan. I was hyperventilating. They doctored it. I gasped. They edited the tape. Calm down, Nolan said. His voice was steady. An anchor. Send me the link. I sent it. I waited. 5 minutes later, he called back. It is a hatchet job, he said. A bad one. I can hear the ambient noise floor change between the words. The reverberation does not match. We will have it analyzed by a forensic audio expert. We will prove it is fake, but everyone is hearing it now. I said, the damage is done. Reputation is a long game. Gabriella, Nolan said, they are playing for the sprint. We are playing for the marathon. Do not post about it. Do not defend yourself in the comments. That is what they want. They want you to look defensive. I hung up, but I could not sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The audio clip played on a loop in my head. I am going to destroy you. The doubt crept in. The insidious 3 a.m. doubt. Was I unstable? Was I imagining the conspiracy? Maybe I was difficult. Maybe I had been a bad daughter. Maybe I deserved this. I replayed my childhood. Every argument, every time I raised my voice, I looked for proof of my own villainy. The next day, I sat in Nolan's office, dark circles under my eyes. I told him about the doubt. He nodded. He did not dismiss it. Gaslighting is not just about lying to you, he said. It is about making you question your own sensory input. You are exhausted. Gabriella, you are fighting your creators. That is a primal wound. He slid a card across the desk. Dr. Celine Pratt, he said. She is a therapist. She works with whistleblowers and people leaving high-control groups. She does not report to the courts. She is safe. Go see her. I went, Doctor. Pratt's office was small and quiet. She listened for an hour while I poured out the history of the box. The nurse, the audio clip, the feeling of being erased. When I was done, she looked at me. You are looking for permission to be angry, she said. You think if you are angry, it proves you are unstable, like they say. Yes, I said. Gabriella. She said, you are in a burning house. Screaming fire does not make you crazy. It makes you observant. You do not need to be perfect to be right. You just need to be accurate. You do not need to be perfect to be right. The words settled in my chest. I had spent 30 years trying to be perfect so they would love me. I did not have to do that anymore. I walked out of her office feeling lighter. The audio clip was still out there. The lies were still spreading, but I knew what I had seen. 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Ms. Reed? The voice was hushed, muffled. Yes? It is Lydia Perrin, the compliance director, the woman at the trust. Do not speak, she said. Just listen. I cannot talk long. I am outside on a burner phone. Okay, I said. They are pressuring me, she said. Her voice was trembling. Douglas Reed and the board. They gave the order yesterday. They want the archives purged. Anything older than 7 years. They are calling it routine data hygiene. My heart hammered. File 4C? I asked. It is in the queue. She said, they are shredding it at the end of the month. That is in 3 days. 3 days. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I knew your grandmother, Lydia said. She gave me my first job. She believed in this trust. What they are doing. It is not what she wanted. It is rot. How do I stop it? I asked. I cannot stop the shredders, she said. I have to sign off on the manifest or I lose my pension. But what? If a court order forces a preservation before the 1st of the month, I can freeze the queue, she said. But you have to be fast. If you want 4C, you have to come and get it. Legally. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. The end of the month. 3 days. They were going to burn the evidence, the inventory list, the letter of intent, the proof of the money laundering. All of it was going into a shredder. I called Nolan. Lydia Perrin just called. I said, they are purging the archives on the 1st. We have 72 hours. Nolan's voice shifted. The calm maritime lawyer was gone. The shark had entered the water. Meet me at the courthouse in 20 minutes, he said. We are filing an emergency petition for injunctive relief. We are going to wake up a judge. I grabbed my purse. I grabbed Mara's notebook. I grabbed the printout of the email. I was done playing defense. I was done waiting for them to apologize. They wanted to erase the truth? Fine. I was going to make sure the ink was permanent. The courthouse lobby smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. Nolan and I walked in at 8:30 in the morning, our footsteps echoing on the terrazzo. We had filed the emergency petition for injunctive relief late yesterday, a legal Hail Mary to stop the Renfield Cultural Trust from shredding File 4C. Nolan carried his battered briefcase like a shield. He looked tired but sharp, his eyes scanning the docket list posted on the wall. Judge Aris is presiding. He muttered, he is fair. but he hates drama. We need to stick to the fiduciary facts. No emotion. I nodded, clutching my own file. Inside were the notarized affidavit from Mara Keene, the analysis of the spliced audio, and the letter of intent. We entered the courtroom. It was smaller than I expected, wood-paneled and intimate, and it was not empty. Sitting at the respondent's table, looking fresh and impeccably tailored, was my father's attorney, Charles Sterling. Beside him sat Douglas and Marianne Reed. They were already here. My breath hitched. We had only served the papers to the trust's legal office 12 hours ago. The hearing was an emergency add-on. They should have been scrambling. Instead, Sterling had a stack of binders organized with color-coded tabs. They knew. I whispered to Nolan. "Leaks," Nolan said, his jaw tightening. "This town is a sieve. Keep your eyes forward." I walked past my parents. I could smell my mother's perfume, the same gardenia scent she had worn at my birthday party. She did not look at me. She was staring at her hands, which were clasped in her lap, a picture of maternal distress. Douglas was reading a document, his face a mask of bored competence. Judge Aris entered, his black robe swishing. We all stood. "Be seated," he said. "We are here on an emergency motion regarding the Renfield Cultural Trust archives. Mr. Vance, you are alleging imminent destruction of evidence?" "Yes, Your Honor," Nolan said. "Standing. We have credible information that the Trust intends to purge archived files, specifically File 4C, by the end of the month. This file is material to my client's claim regarding the mismanagement of her grandmother's estate and potential fraud in the execution of a codicil." "Mr. Sterling stood up. He was smooth, polished, the kind of lawyer who charged by the minute and was worth every penny. "Your Honor, this is a fishing expedition based on the paranoid delusions of an estranged daughter," Sterling said. His voice was rich with condescension. "The Trust performs routine data hygiene every 7 years. It is standard compliance. There is no conspiracy." He gestured to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Reed are heartbroken to be here. They have tried for years to support Gabriella through her emotional volatility. But this recent behavior, crashing a birthday party, threatening them, and now harassing a charitable foundation, is a pattern of instability." Marianne let out a small, choked sob. She dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. It was subtle. It was perfect. I felt the blood rushing to my face. Emotional volatility. They were using the exact phrase from the fake PR posts. They were building the cage around me, bar by bar, right here in the courtroom. Douglas stood up when prompted. He looked at the judge with the weary expression of a man burdened by a difficult child. "I loved my mother, Your Honor," Douglas said. "But toward the end, she was confused. She was vulnerable. I stepped in to protect the estate from exploitation. I had to ensure her legacy was not squandered. Gabriella. Sadly, she does not understand the complexities of these financial instruments. She sees conspiracy where there is only stewardship. It was a masterclass. He was the protector. I was the confused, greedy, unstable daughter." Nolan put a hand on my arm to steady me. He stood up again. "Your Honor, we are not here to debate my client's mental health, which is excellent. By the way, we are here to debate facts." Nolan opened his binder. "Fact 1, he said. "We have a sworn affidavit from Mara Keene, the deceased's caregiver, stating that Douglas Reed removed a file labeled 4C from the deceased's home 1 week before her death, against her explicit verbal protest." Douglas stiffened. "Fact 2, Nolan continued. "We have a forensic analysis of the audio recording circulating online, which purports to show my client threatening her parents. The analysis confirms the audio has been spliced and edited to alter the context. It is a fabrication." "Fact 3, Nolan said, holding up the notary's statement. "The notary who witnessed the codicil has stated under oath that the deceased was under duress and that Douglas Reed was heard saying, 'We cannot let her ruin this.'" Nolan paused. "We are not asking for a verdict today, Your Honor. We are asking for preservation. If the trust has nothing to hide, Why are they shredding documents 3 days after my client requested them? Judge Eris looked at Sterling. The timing is convenient. Mr. Sterling, the judge said. It is coincidence. Sterling insisted. I am granting a temporary preservation order, Judge Eris said. My heart leaped. However, he continued, I am limiting the scope. The trust operations cannot be paralyzed by a broad discovery request. The trust is ordered to preserve and produce File 4C and any direct correspondence regarding the codicil. The rest of the archives remain under standard protocol. It was a narrow win, but it was a win. We walked out of the courtroom. Douglas and Marianne hurried past us. Surrounded by their legal team, as they passed, Douglas looked at me. His eyes were cold, devoid of any fatherly recognition. You are making a mistake, Gabriella, he said quietly. You are going to lose everything. I already lost you. I said, I have nothing left to lose. He turned and walked away. The next day, I was allowed into the Renfield Trust's viewing room. It was a small, windowless office on the 10th floor. A junior lawyer from the trust sat in the corner, watching me like a hawk. The box was on the table. File 4C. It was a standard archival box. I opened it. My heart sank. It was thin. There were index tabs, but most of the sections were empty. Correspondence. Removed. Financial ledgers. 2020 to 2023. Removed. Beneficiary. Designation. Removed. They had gutted it. I flipped through the few remaining pages. Meeting minutes from 2018. A receipt for art restoration. Useless. I felt a surge of despair. They had won. They had sanitized the file before the court order even landed. But then, stuck to the back of a folder, I found a single sheet of paper. It looked like it had been missed, perhaps because it was stuck with static to another page. It was a directive, dated 5 years ago. Subject: Governance Structure. The Elena Reed Restricted Fund. I read the text. Upon the death of the grantor, Elena Reed. The advisory power for the restricted fund shall pass to the designated successor chair. The successor chair shall have sole authority to audit grant distributions and veto board appointments. Designated successor chair, Gabriella Reed. I stared at my name. It was not about the money, it was about the power, governance. My grandmother had not just left me cash. She had left me the keys to the car. She had given me the power to audit the fund, the power to see where every dollar went, the power to veto the board members, my father's friends. If I had this position, I could see the loops. I could see the kickbacks to the consultants. I could stop the flow of money to Douglas's political allies. That was why they disowned me. The bylaws of the trust likely had a clause about trustee qualifications. Someone with a history of instability or reputational risk could be removed or disqualified. They needed me to be crazy so they could bypass me. I took a picture of the page. The junior lawyer stood up. No photos, she said. I ignored her. I took another one. I am done, I said. I walked out of the room, my mind racing. I went to the ladies' room down the hall to splash water on my face. I was alone in the bathroom. I leaned over the sink, staring at my reflection. I looked tired, pale. The door opened. I saw Lydia Perrin in the mirror. She did not look at me. She walked to the stall next to the sinks. She looked terrified. Her face was gray. She went into the stall and locked it. A moment later, a hand slid under the divider. It was holding a small silver flash drive. "Take it," she whispered. I froze. "Take it," she hissed. Before they check my bag, I reached down and grabbed the drive. It was warm. "Count to 10 before you leave," she whispered. I heard her flush the toilet. She walked out of the stall, washed her hands without looking at me, and left the bathroom. I waited 10 seconds. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it would crack a rib. I put the drive in my bra, just like I had with the inventory list. I walked out of the building, past the security guards, past the reception desk. I felt like I was carrying a grenade. I drove straight to Nolan's office. We plugged the drive into an air-gapped laptop, one not connected to the internet. There were 3 folders, Emails, board minutes, strategy. We opened the emails folder. It was a trove. Hundreds of scanned PDFs. I saw my father's name. I saw the name of a PR strategist from Bexley and Rowe. Date: January 10th, 2026. From Douglas Reed. To S. Bexley. Subject: Containment Event. I read the email. We need to accelerate the timeline. She is asking questions about the attic. If she finds the directive, we lose the board seats. We need to trigger the narrative at the birthday party. And the response from Bexley. Understood. We will frame the disowning as a protective measure for the family. If she speaks, we trigger the instability clause. Disowning frames her as unstable. It delegitimizes her before she can claim the chair. I felt sick. It was a blueprint. A cold, calculated blueprint for emotional destruction. They had planned my birthday party as a trap. The family toast was a scripted scene in a play designed to destroy my credibility. There was no physical harm discussed, no hitmen, no violence, just reputation, just words. Disowning frames her as unstable. It was modern warfare. It was clean. It was legal. And it was devastating. Nolan sat back, his face grim. This proves malice, he said. This proves conspiracy. This is not just a family dispute. This is tortious interference. This is fraud. But we cannot use it yet. I said, Lydia gave this to me illegally. If we submit it, she gets fired, maybe prosecuted. We have to be careful. Nolan agreed. We can use it to guide our deposition questions. We can use it to know where to look. But we need a way to bring this into the light without burning your source. While we were strategizing, the other shoe dropped. My phone rang. It was Karen from HR again. Gabriella, she said. I knew from her tone. I am sorry, she said. But given the continued noise surrounding your situation and the pending legal matters, the firm has decided to place you on temporary administrative leave. Leave? I asked. Paid? Unpaid? She said. Until the investigation is complete, we cannot have the reputational risk. Gabriella. Clients are asking questions. I closed my eyes. They had reached my job, my income. I understand. I said. My voice was calm. I will send you the paperwork. She said. I hung up. I did not scream. I did not throw the phone. I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Wrongful action claim. I documented the call. I documented the time. I documented the reason. I was not just a victim anymore. I was a plaintiff. I looked at Nolan. They put me on unpaid leave. I said. Nolan nodded. He expected this. They are trying to starve you out, he said. They know litigation is expensive. They want you to run out of money so you have to settle. I will sell my car. I said, I will sell my clothes. I do not care. Nolan looked at the flash drive. We need a bigger move, he said. We are fighting in the shadows. We need sunlight. What do you mean? I asked. The Renfield Winter Gala is this Saturday, he said. I laughed. A harsh sound. I am definitely not invited. Nolan smiled. It was a shark smile. You do not need an invitation. Gabriella, you are the designated successor chair of the restricted fund. The bylaws say the chair is an ex officio member of the host committee. I looked at him. You want me to crash the gala? I want you to attend the gala. Nolan corrected. I want you to walk in there, in front of the press, in front of the donors, in front of your parents, and claim your seat. They will throw me out. I said, not if you have the court order. Nolan said, and not if you have the truth. I thought about it. The gala, the glossy event where my father preened and my mother held court, the place built on image. If I went there, I would be walking into the lion's den, but it was the only place where they could not hide. I will do it, I said. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I did not buy a new dress. I went to my closet and pulled out a plain black sheath dress. High neck, long sleeves, severe, serious, no jewelry. I went to see Dr. Pratt one last time. I practiced what I would say. I am not going to scream. I told her, I am not going to cry. Good, she said. What are you going to do? I am going to ask a question. I said, what question? I took a deep breath. Why did you need me discredited before I even spoke? Doctor? Pratt nodded. That is the question, she said. It shifts the burden. It makes them explain the timeline. I practiced it, over and over. Why did you need me discredited? Saturday night arrived. I met Nolan outside the Carmel Heights Conservatory. The building was glowing with golden light. Valets were parking Bentleys and Rolls-Royces. The press line was 3 deep. I saw my parents arrive. They stepped out of a limousine. Douglas looked regal in his tuxedo. Marianne was wearing emeralds that glittered under the flashbulbs. They smiled. They waved. They looked like the perfect couple. My stomach churned. Ready? Nolan asked. He was wearing a tux that looked like he had rented it in 1990, but he wore it with confidence. I touched the flash drive in my purse. I touched the copy of the court order. I am ready, I said. We walked toward the entrance. The security guard at the door held up a hand. Name? He asked, looking at his clipboard. Gabriella Reed. I said. He scanned the list. He frowned. I do not see you on the list. Ms. Reed. I pulled out the document. I am the successor chair of the Elena Reed Restricted Fund. I said, under the bylaws of the trust. I am a standing member of the committee. The guard looked at the paper. It was a certified court document. He hesitated. I will have to check with Mr. Reed, he said. You do not need to check with anyone, Nolan said. Stepping forward, this is a legal instrument. Denying her entry is a violation of the trust's charter and could result in personal liability. The guard looked at Nolan. He looked at the line of people waiting behind us. He looked at the cameras. He stepped aside. Go ahead, he muttered. We walked in. The conservatory was breathtaking. A glass dome filled with exotic plants. Illuminated by thousands of fairy lights, a string quartet was playing. Waiters drifted with champagne. The conversation died as we walked down the central aisle. Heads turned. Whispers started. Is that the daughter? I thought she was in rehab. She looks normal. I kept my head high. I did not look at the guests. I looked straight ahead. I saw my parents. They were standing near the podium, holding court with a group of donors. Douglas saw me first. His smile faltered. For a second, the mask dropped, and I saw pure, unadulterated panic. He said something to Marianne. She turned. She went pale. They started to move toward me. They were going to try to intercept me. They were going to try to hustle me into a side room, away from the cameras. I did not stop. I did not slow down. I walked straight toward the donor reception area, where the board members and the press photographers were hovering. Gabriella. Douglas hissed as he got close. What are you doing? Get out. Now. I ignored him. I walked past him. I reached the podium. The host, a local news anchor named Jim, looked confused. I stepped up to the microphone. I did not grab it. I adjusted it. The feedback whined slightly. The room went silent. My father was reaching for my arm. Security! He barked. Remove her. I leaned into the mic. I am not here to cause a scene, I said. My voice was amplified, filling the glass dome. I held up the court order. I am here because I am the successor chair of the Elena Reed Fund, and I have standing. The cameras flashed. Pop, pop, pop. I looked at the crowd. I saw the shock on their faces. I looked at my parents. They were frozen. They knew that if they dragged me off stage now, in front of the press, it would look exactly like what it was, a silencing. I took a breath. I had the floor, and I had the truth. The air inside the Carmel Heights Conservatory was humid and smelled of jasmine and money. I stood at the entrance in my plain black dress. It was not a gala gown. It was a statement, in a sea of sequins, taffeta, and jewels. My unadorned black wool sheath looked like a shadow. It looked like a judge's robe. I felt Nolan beside me, a solid presence in his rented tuxedo. Do not stop walking, he murmured. If you stop, they will swarm you. I nodded. I clutched the small leather bag that held the court order and the flash drive. My heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. We stepped onto the main floor. The hum of conversation was a physical force, a wall of sound that broke the moment I crossed the threshold of the donor reception area. It started as a ripple, a head turned, a whisper passed behind a hand, then another. Within 10 seconds, the silence spread outward from me like a shockwave. I saw them. Douglas and Marianne were standing near the center of the room, holding champagne flutes, laughing at something a board member had said. They looked magnificent. My father was the picture of silver-haired authority. My mother was glittering in emeralds, her smile practiced and perfect. Then Douglas saw me. His smile did not just fade, it vanished. It was replaced by a look of sheer, unmasked panic that I had never seen on his face before. He said something sharp to my mother. She turned, saw me, and her hand flew to her throat, covering the diamond necklace there. They started toward me. They moved fast, abandoning their guests, their faces set in grim lines. "Gabriella," Douglas said as he reached me. His voice was a low hiss, pitched so only I could hear. "You are making a scene. We are going to the green room. Now." He reached for my elbow. His grip was tight, painful. It was the grip of a man used to moving furniture and people wherever he wanted them. I pulled my arm back. I did not step away. I stepped into his space. "I am not going anywhere." "Douglas," I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I had found in Dr. Pratt's office. "I am not here to hide in a green room." Marianne moved to my other side, flanking me. She was smiling for the room. A terrible, rictus smile. "Darling," she said through her teeth. "Please, you are unwell. We can call the car. We can get you help." I looked at her. I looked at the fear in her eyes. "I do not need help." "Mother," I said, "I need the microphone." I walked past them. They were too stunned to grab me again. They had expected me to crumble. They had expected the daughter who cried in her room. They did not know what to do with the woman who walked straight toward the press line. I reached the podium. The host, a local news anchor named Jim, who I had watched growing up, looked at me with confusion. He looked at Douglas, who was signaling frantically to cut the feed. "Jim," I said. He blinked. "Gabriella? We have a schedule." I pulled the folded court order from my bag. I laid it on the podium, smoothing it out with a steady hand. "I am the designated successor chair of the Elena Reed Restricted Fund." I said, "I am named in the governance documents. I have standing to speak at this meeting." Jim looked at the document. He saw the judge's seal. He saw the timestamp. He looked at the camera crew, who were already zooming in. He stepped back. The microphone was mine. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the faces of the people who had watched me grow up, the people who had read the vague Facebook posts about my instability, the people who had whispered about me in grocery store aisles. I did not feel fear. I felt a cold, crystal clarity. "Good evening," I said. My voice boomed through the conservatory, bouncing off the glass dome. "Most of you know me as Douglas and Marianne Reed's daughter." I said, "You have likely heard that I am unstable. You have heard that I was disowned for my own protection. You have heard that I am a risk to this family's reputation." I paused. The silence was absolute. Even the waiters had stopped moving. "I am not here to defend my character." I said, "I am here to correct the record." I took the flash drive out of my bag and held it up. It was small, silver, insignificant. On January 10th, an email was sent from my father's account to a crisis management firm called Bexley & Rowe. I said, the subject line was containment event. I saw Douglas flinch as if he had been struck. In that email, I continued, my father wrote the following. If she speaks, we trigger the narrative. Disowning frames her as unstable. It delegitimizes her before she can claim the chair. A gasp went through the room. It was not a theatrical gasp. It was the sound of air being sucked out of 100 lungs at once. I continued. On January 27th, at my 30th birthday party, my parents executed that plan. I said, they staged a public disowning to preemptively destroy my credibility, because they knew I had found a key to a cedar box in my grandmother's attic, a box that contained proof of a looted trust. I looked directly at the board members standing in the front row. They doctored audio to make me sound violent. I said, "They hired a firm to threaten me with defamation suits, and 3 days ago, they ordered the destruction of File 4C from the trust archives to hide the fact that my grandmother left me the oversight of this fund." I lowered the hand holding the drive. "I am not unstable," I said. "I am simply the auditor my grandmother hired from the grave." For 3 seconds. No one moved. Then, a man in the front row stepped forward. It was Marcus Thorne, the board member who had witnessed the codicil. He looked pale. "Douglas," he said. His voice shook. "Is this true? Did you write that email?" Douglas tried to laugh. It was a wet, jagged sound. "Marcus, please," Douglas said, spreading his hands. "This is exactly what I warned you about. She is having an episode. That drive is probably full of family photos. She is hallucinating." He turned to the security guards. "Get her off the stage," he shouted. "Now!" 2 guards started to move. "No." The voice came from the side of the stage. We all turned. Lydia Perrin was standing there. She was wearing her gala dress, a dark blue silk, but she looked like she was facing a firing squad. She stepped into the light. "She is not hallucinating," Lydia said. Her voice was trembling, barely audible, but the microphone picked it up. "Lydia," Douglas warned. His eyes were murderous. Lydia looked at me, then at the board. "I was instructed by Douglas Reed and the executive committee to purge File 4C from the archives last Tuesday." Lydia said, "I was told to list it as routine data hygiene." But it was not routine. It was targeted. She took a deep breath. "I have the manifest," she said. "I signed it. I cannot do it anymore." The room fractured. It was instantaneous chaos. The polite veneer of the gala shattered. Donors began shouting questions. Phones were raised, recording everything. The journalist from the Harbor Light Dispatch pushed past a waiter, shouting a question at Nolan. Nolan stepped up to the edge of the stage. He did not take the mic, but he pitched his voice to Carrie. "We have filed a motion for discovery regarding the destruction of evidence." Nolan said, "This is an active fiduciary proceeding. We have the emails. We have the witness testimony. The truth is in the court record." Douglas looked around the room. He saw his world collapsing. He saw the friends who had drunk his wine now looking at him with disgust. He saw the cameras feasting on his ruin. He turned to Marianne. "Do something," he snapped. Marianne looked at him. Then she looked at me. She walked up the steps to the podium. The guard stepped back, unsure of what to do. She stood in front of me. Her eyes were wet, but not with the pretty, manipulative tears she usually cried. These were ugly, real tears. "Why could you not just let it go?" she whispered. The microphone caught it. "Why did you have to destroy me?" I asked her. "Why did you hate me so much?" "I did not hate you," she said. Her voice broke. "I was afraid of you." "Afraid?" I asked. She looked out at the room, then back at me. "Your grandmother loved you more," she said. It was a simple, devastating sentence. "She trusted you. She thought you were the strong one. She thought Douglas was weak, and she was right." Marianne let out a sob that sounded like something tearing. "We knew if you saw the papers, if you saw what she wanted, you would choose her," she said. "You would choose her legacy over us. We could not lose control of the story. Gabriella, we could not let you be the one to decide who we were." She reached out, as if to touch my face, then dropped her hand. "It was never about morality," she said. "It was only about dominance." The room was silent again, listening to the confession of a mother who had sacrificed her daughter to save her own ego. I looked at them. My father, the weak king, my mother, the jealous queen. "I have one more thing," I said. I picked up the court order again. I memorized the last page of my grandmother's letter of intent. I said, "The page you tried to shred." I looked at Douglas. "There is a clause," I said, "a specific clause regarding the successor chair. It states that if the designated chair is publicly discredited or incapacitated by the actions of immediate family members, an automatic, independent external audit is triggered for the entire trust. Douglas's face went gray. By disowning me, I said, by painting me as unstable in the press, by attacking my reputation. You did not disqualify me. You activated the safeguard. I leaned into the microphone. The audit begins on Monday. I said, and it will not be done by your friends. It will be done by the state. I stepped back from the podium. I placed the microphone gently on the stand. I walked down the steps. The crowd parted for me. They did not whisper this time. They stared with a mixture of awe and fear. I was not the victim anymore. I was the storm. I walked past Douglas. He was staring at the floor, his hands shaking. He looked old. He looked finished. I walked past Marianne. She was weeping, her face buried in her hands. I walked out of the conservatory. Nolan was right beside me, outside. The cool night air hit my face. It felt clean. Behind me, I could hear the shouting. I could hear Douglas's attorney screaming about lawsuits. I could hear the board members demanding an emergency vote. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out. It was a text from Karen at Brightwell Metrics. Gabriella, we saw the live stream. The CEO would like to meet with you tomorrow morning to clarify your status and perhaps discuss a promotion. I stared at the screen. The world had turned. Yesterday, I was a liability. Today, I was a whistleblower. Today, I was dangerous to ignore. I looked at Nolan. We did it, I said. Nolan lit a cigarette, his hand cupping the flame against the wind. You did it, kid, he said. I looked back at the glowing glass dome of the conservatory. I had won. I had the truth. I had my name back. But as I watched the lights of the police cars turning into the driveway, I knew the cost. I had burned the house down. I was standing in the ashes. But for the first time in 30 years, the ground beneath my feet felt solid. I turned away from the gala and walked toward the parking lot. I had a lot of work to do on Monday. Thank you so much for listening to We're Here to Disown You. This story was a journey into the dark corners of family secrets and the power of standing up for the truth. I would love to know where you are listening from. Please leave a comment below and represent your city or country. If you enjoyed Gabriella's fight for justice, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories so you never miss an episode. And finally, I want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in Gabriella's shoes? Share your thoughts in English in the comments section. I read every single one. Thank you for being part of this story.